Okay. Zok the Hilul Gemara. Oh, thank you so much. Maybe get Medina Sayyam. If someone brings a get from Medina Sayyam. So the question first is, what is a get? So let's see Tosfos. Tosfos tells us, maybe get Apal Gav de Lashar Shtaris Pa'amim Nami Kari Get. Even though all shtaris are often referred to as a get, like a get chayv, a shtar chayv. Kiditnan ba'sheleach ein edim choismin al haget ela b'pnei tikun ha'olam. V'ari b'chol shtaris, and that Gemara is talking about all types of shtaris. U'beperik his gabel nami tanya v'chein legittin u'mefarish asam gittin mamay. Nevertheless, kan get isha. Here, the Tanya doesn't have to tell us that this special requirement of befani nechtam is a requirement only for get isha, because mishum de beroiv mekaimos hecha the Tanya gets tam iri beget isha. Normally, when the Tanya uses the word get, he's referring to the get isha. So that's the first question. Now, why is it called a get? So the Vilna Gaon says that a get, the letters Gimel and the letters Tes are never found together anywhere in Tanakh. You'll never find the letter Gimel and the letter Tes together anywhere in Tanakh. Get has to represent complete separation. Complete separation is there'll never be a connection. There's never a connection between Gimel and Tes. So of course, now that we have Reb Chaim Kanievsky, or now that we had Reb Chaim Kanievsky, we can always check all of the different types of chaps. So Reb Chaim Gerade, there's three other letters that you also never find together with a gimel. I think a gimel and a pei. He had a couple of different sets of letters that you also never find together. But gimel and tes are the first letters in the alphabet that you never find it there together. Get is also gematria 12, right? 3 and 9 is 12. So Tosfos, the minig is a get is written with 12 rows, 12 lines. The get gematria yud beis is that the gematria of get. V'ri shama b'shem Rav Hai Goyin b'shem Rav Sadia mishum dechsiv. It says in the parsha Sefer Krisos. It's a Sefer Krisos kishir yud beis shitin hamafsikin bein arba chumshei Sefer Torah. In between each chumash, there are 4 lines of blank space that separates between the chumash Bereshis and Shemois and the Yikra Bamidbar. So 4 times 3 is 12. So you're going to ask me, what about the 4 lines between Bamidbar and Devarim? Kedama b'Vavasher, Ketzorach laniach arba shitin bein kol sefer v'sefer. The havsik shebein vayidaber l'mishnah Torah. The 4-line gap between Sefer Bar Midbar and Sefer Devarim, loy choshev, that doesn't count. If Dave Zolti would be here, it would be action. Sefer Mishnah Torah, Sefer Devarim is not telling us anything new. It's only chazering over what is said already earlier in the Torah. So this is a matter of big discussion. I don't have all the sides of the discussion, but I know if David Zolti would be here, he would definitely have what to say on it. I think David Zolti is on the way to Eretz Yisrael. So maybe he'll check in from Eretz Yisrael. We'll ask him. Let's not hold our breath for that. Okay. Zok the Heilige Mishnah weiter. Hamayvi get Medina Sayyam. What is the definition of Medina Sayyam? Sounds like it's overseas. Zokt Rashi Kol Chutz La'aretz Korile Medina Sayyam. Any part of Chutz La'aretz is referred to as Medina Sayyam, bar mi Babel, except for Babel. Come on, as the Gemara will explain later. Sarach sheyoymar b'fani nechta b'fani nechta. The single shliach that comes with the get has to say testimony on the get that he's bringing merely as a shliach, and he has to say this get was written in front of me, and this get was signed in front of me. Zokt Rashi, who is this person that's bringing the get? Tarcha shaliach hamaviyai loymar. The time of Mefarish v'Gemara. And here's the important words of Rashi. Ushliach zeh habal osoi shliach lahilach. So Rashi is telling us there's technically 3 types of shluchim when a get is being sent from one place to another. There's a shliach lahilach. which means the Baal wants to send his wife a get. He gives it to the shliach and says, please give this get to my wife. The get, the separation actually happens when the shliach lelocha hands the get to the wife. That's when it happens. But then there's a shliach lekabbalah, where she makes a shliach, and she says, I want you to be mekabel to get on my behalf. There, the moment the get is given over to the shliach, she's migureshus, even before the delivery. And there's also called something, we'll see in the Gemara later on, something called the shliach lahava, which also is a shliach that she makes, but that would not, it won't affect the transaction until she actually receives the get. Leilach is the shliach of the Baal to deliver the get to his wife. And that's what we're talking about here. The shliach that requires the befani nechtam is the shliach leilacha. And there's reasons for it. One of the reasons, we'll see in the Mishnah, there's two reasons why you have to say befani nechtam, and we'll see how those reasons apply most appropriately to a shliach leilacha rather than a shliach lekabbalah. So we'll see that in a minute. Zok Gemara weiter. Even if they're bringing from Rekem and Cheger, what are Rekem and Cheger? Zok Rashi, Targum shall ben Kadosh ben Barid. I guess these are areas near to Israel. Mitergamini ben Rekem and Cheger. So if you bring from there, you also have to say b'fani nechtam u'fani nechtam. So this is already a geographical question as to what is considered part of Eretz Yisrael, l'gabe this shayla, l'gabe this halacha. Not necessarily what's considered part of Eretz Yisrael for chiyuv trumas u'maishros or other chiyuvim hatluyim ba'aretz. Rabbi Eliezer Aimer, afilu mikfar ludim lelud. So Rashi, even from kfar ludim shei mechutz la'aretz lelud she smuchala v'hi me'eretz Yisrael b'gemor mefarsh b'tayim. V'chacham amayim einei tzarich sheyomer b'fani nechtam b'fani nechtam ela hamevi mibedinas hayam, only if they're bringing it to Medinas Hayam. And Rashi tells us what exactly are the details of this machlokes b'gemar mefarish my moisvi Tanakama dereisha. What are they adding to the original Tanakama, who also said Medinas Hayam? So what are they different than the original Tanakama? V'hamoylech v'hamevi mimedina lemedina b'Medinas Hayam, and even if v'hamoylech me'Yisrael b'Medinas Hayam, and also v'hamoylech v'hamevi Medina 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 Sayam. If you're going from one Medina to another Medina, in Medina Sayam, once again, Cherach Shiyoymar b'fani nechtam b'fani nechtam. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel Omer afilu mehagmonya lehagmonya. And Rashi says, b'gamar mefarish irachas, even in one city like East Berlin and West Berlin, a city that's split in two because it's controlled by different rulers, and they're not open to one another. So there was no easy transportation in between these two parts of the city. But you would also need to say b'fani nechtam u'b'fani nechtam. I'm sorry? Yeah. Well, that's that. Those are two countries. I'm talking about in a city. No, but it was one city split in two. North Korea, South Korea is not one city. We're talking about a city that's like on the border, a city that's on the Granites, that's halfly owned by one, half by the other. Yeah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer may Rekem lemizrach, from Rekem to the east. So now we're going to get a better understanding of the borders. From Rekem to the east. So the east is the Jordan, where Jordan River is the east border of Eretz Yisrael. So may Rekem lemizrach, from Rekem towards the east, is considered chutz la'aretz. Rashi says, "Merekem lemizrach, merekem atzoif ha'olam lemizrachai have Medinas Hayam." Anything east of the city Rekem, the Rekem kimizrach, and Rekem itself is also considered chutz la'aretz. Of Rashi, berekem atzma nidoinis kimizrach ha'olam v'loy ke'eretz Yisrael. Therefore, maybe merekem, if we're bringing a get from Rekem to Eretz Yisrael, tarich loymar b'fani nechtam b'fani nechtam v'chein kulam. And so too the other three cities that the Gemara is going to, the Mishnah is going to discuss shortly. So before I continue in Rashi, let's just read the rest of it. May Ashkelon is towards the south of Eretz Yisrael, but you always hear Ashkelon getting shot by missiles from Gaza, because they're on the south end of Eretz Yisrael. But Ashkelon Kedarim, Ashkelon itself is not considered part of Eretz Yisrael for these purposes. And they Akku L'Tzafon from Akku, which is in the north, anywhere north of the Akku Ketzafon. So what could be, but we're focusing on it as a north-south border. V'chein kulam, all of these cities, Rechem, L'Mizrachi Shel Eretz Yisrael, V'chutzala, V'Ashkelon, L'Droima, V'Akku L'Tzvoina. Dr. Rashi, how come the Mishnah doesn't talk about what's the gradients of the west side of Eretz Yisrael? Erev Shel Eretz Yisrael, Ma'ariv Shel Eretz Yisrael, I'm sorry, to the west of Eretz Yisrael, Ein Tzarech Gvul. Why? Shayam Hagadol Gvul, the Mediterranean is the Gvul. The Chsiv Gvul Yam, V'Yilchem Hayam Hagadol. The Baltic. Rav Meir Omer, Akku is Eretz Yisrael. He argues and says Akku is considered part of Eretz Yisrael, Gittin, for the purposes of Gittin, so you don't say b'fani nechta, b'fani nechta. What about maybe get be'eretz Yisrael? If someone brings a get in Eretz Yisrael, there ain't no tzarech sheyoymar b'fani nechta, b'fani nechta. But what happens when Yesha Allah Ayrim? What if the Baal is ma'aris of Rashi and says Muzuyif? This is not a valid get. I never sent this get. Then Yiskayim b'choshev. Only then do you have to be Makayim the star. Zok Rashi. What does it mean Yiskayim b'choshev? There's actually three ways to be Mekayim a star, and this applies equally to a star of Mominus and to a star of Gittin. So one way is the two Edim that actually signed the get come to Besdin and say, we signed this get. This is definitely our signature. Or if two other Edim come along and say, yes, I recognize this is Yankel's signature, and I recognize that this is Beryl's signature. That's also good kiyum. The third kiyum, which Rashi doesn't mention here, is if Besdin has a sample of these Edim signature from a different document that was already Mekuyim, they're allowed to use that document to compare. It's what's called signature verification. I don't know if Olam knows, but there's a major court case going on right now, challenging the signature verification of the governor's race that occurred last year in Arizona. So it's actually in court right now. That they have, by mail-in ballots, they have to verify the signature to make sure that it's not a phony ballot, it's someone who actually voted. So there's a big war going on about that. No, first the judge dismissed it. Then it went to the Supreme Court, who says you can't dismiss this. You have to do the charayin then. Another two the charayin then. The problem is it wasn't even tried to forge. Like someone signed like Mickey Mouse. Like it was a joke. And if there are no Ayrim, there's no one saying that the star is possible. Mistama kosher, you could rely that the get is kosher. The Bekiyan Lishma, we're soon going to see one of the reasons why the Shliach Leilocha has to say B'fani Nechtam is because we're afraid that maybe the get was not written properly and it was not written Lishma, so it was a possible get. How in the world does someone saying B'fani Nechtam show us that it was written properly? That's a whole different story. We'll see that in a minute. But in Eretz Yisrael, we don't have a problem of Lishma, the Bekiyan Lishma, and since it's within one country, the Edim Mitzuyin Tamid L'Kaima, we don't need to worry that there'll be a ear on the star, and then we won't be able to find Edim to be Mekayim it because you can't travel easily from the place where it was written to the place where it was given. That wouldn't be a problem in Eretz Yisrael because there's free passage and it's easy to find people who will recognize it. Okay. Zokta Heilige Gemara weiter. Let's start the Gemara, and if we have time, there's some very important places in here as well. Zokta Gemara, my timer. What is the reason why you have to say B'fani Nechtav or B'fani Nechtav? Zokta Gemara, Rabba Omar. Rabba said, turning on Tamid Beis, Lefisha Ein Bekiyan Lishma. From these long blätter in Soita to these mini blätter in the Gittin, I'm not so stressed. Lefisha Ein Bekiyan Lishma. More toises, yeah. We have a lot of toises. Yeah, but the Geschmack about toises is optional. Whatever toises we can cover, we'll cover. But we still finish the block. What does it mean, Ein Bekiyan Lishma? Zok Rashi, Gittin, we're back to normal with our Rashi, with our Tosfos, with our Rishonim. Everyone's back in their place. We shouldn't feel insulted, but in those days, I guess, in Medina Sayyam, they were not knowledgeable. They were not knowledgeable in halacha. Then Yosy, they didn't even know that one of the main important features in the get is tzarich lichtov a get l'shem ha'isha. When a get is written, the sefer has to write it having in mind it's for this man and this woman. So even if you find another man and another woman who both have the same names and live in the same city, so technically the text of the get is applicable to them. If the get wasn't written specifically for them, it's not a kosher get. Ukroksiv, the pasuk says the cost of a law, sefer krisus. It has to be written law, the hainu lishma. Hilchach, therefore, Omer HaShliach, the shliach has to say, Befani nechtav, I saw it being written, ubefani nechtav. So how does that tell us that it's lishma? Because once they say that in Bezdin will tell them, oh, you were there when it was written, so tell me more. Umemela shailin lei im nichtav lishma. Then they'll ask him, okay, so tell us more. Did you notice, was it written in lishma? Well, Omer in, he'll say yes. Well, the Kamei Mefarish, the Gemara is going to ask soon, my timer, lo yatrichu nami lemeimar lishma. If that's the whole reason why they're saying b'fani nechtam, so don't beat around the bush. Get straight to the point. The takana should be that they have to say b'fani nechtam l'shma, b'fani nechtam l'shma. That's Rabba's reason. Rabba Amar l'bishe'ein edim mitzuyin l'kaimon. We're concerned. Dr. Rashi. Ein shiyars mitzuyus misham l'kam. From the city that the get was written and sent to the city where the woman lives, where she's being makabel, it's very hard to find transportation to and fro. What are we going to do if the Baal shows up and says, this get is a possible get, I never wrote the get, it's a fraud? What are we going to do? The only way we can verify the get is if we get Adam to say testimony that this is our signature. But how in the world are you going to get Adam to come there from a different city? And there are no flights scheduled in between the two cities. There's no bus lines. There's nothing. How are they going to get there? So if that happens, we won't have an issue here. So there will not be easy transportation for the Edom to come to be Mekayim the Chesimus Edom. So what did they do? They made a tekana, l'kula, v'haminu l'shliach. They believed an Eid Echad to say that this star is a good star. Question is, how does one aid make a star a good star? You should need two aidim. Well, the kamon parach bein l'rabba liboy trey. The Gemara asked, if this is an integral part of being matter and isha l'shuk, why wouldn't you need two aidim? Zok the Gemara weiter. So those are our two reasons, either because of ein b'kiyum l'shma or because ein edim mitzuyim l'kaimer. My beinayu. To get clarity in what these svaras are, let's see instances when one reason would apply, but the other reason might not. Ika benayu dasu betray. What if two Edom or the two shluchim? What if it wasn't just one shliach? It was actually two shluchim, two shluchim ubrand. That's one option, and we'll get into the details of how that impacts it in a moment. Or inami mimedina lemedina be'eretz Yisrael. It was from one Medina to another Medina in Eretz Yisrael, where there was no easy traveling. When the Malchus was split up, and you couldn't get from one area to the other area, even in Eretz Yisrael, there would be an afternoon. Or inami ba'oisa Medina, b'Medina Siyam. Or if you're in Medina Siyam, but you're in the same Medina, so there's no problem. So let's see Rashi how each of these three cases impacts the Shiloh over here. So the Asuyu Beitrei was the first suggestion where there would be a nafkamina. Ushneim nasu shluchim lagarsha. We have two people together who are a shliach lahilacha. As you see in Rashi, the shliach lahilacha is the one. They're the ones who are doing the transaction of the gershon. Vaget yoytzei mitach shidei shneim, and they're both bringing the get. L'Rabba boy l'meimer. According to Rabba, who says that the problem is en b'ki and l'shma, they still have to say, because just because there's two Edom, just because there's two people here bringing the get, why would that lead us to believe that it was written l'shma? we still need to get into that conversation to ask them. But l'Rava le'boilamim, according to Rava, who the whole reason is that they should be able to be makayim to get. They don't have to say b'fani nechtam. Sharei shnayim. There's two of them. The im ya'ar baal, even if the baal comes and says this is a false get, harehen mitzuyin l'kaimoy, they will be available. They're here, and they will be able to be makayim to get. So the Gemara feels that wouldn't be a problem. The Gemara feels that wouldn't be a problem. Inami Medina la Medina Be'eretz Yisrael, or what if it was from two areas in Eretz Yisrael where, although in both places they are B'kiyim l'Shema, but it's still difficult for people to move back and forth. We're going Yehuda v'Galil, the Solkadai Tahashta, the Loi Shchichi She'arasa. At this point, we're assuming that it's not easy to get back and forth from one area to another area. Li Rabba, the Loi Chayish Lir Ura, according to Rabba, who's not Chayish for Ir, he's only worried about Lishma, the name of Mezuyafu, Loi Boyle Memar. They don't have to say B'fani Nechtam, B'fani Nechtam. Why? Haylu Kol B'nei Eretz Yisrael. Lishma. Everybody in Israel is B'kiyim and Lishma, and therefore there's no concern here. It's all in Eretz Yisrael. But if it's a question of Kiyum, L'Rava Boyle Memar, Ba'in Sheyaris Mitzuyas. Or Idami, Ba'isa Medina, but it's in Chutz La'aretz. Kagoin Me'ir Le'ir, B'Medina Achas. Medina is a Randrita Balaz. Uva Medina Sayam. So since it's in Medina Sayam, L'Rabba, who there's a concern of Lishma Boila Meimar. So ain't the key Lishma, because there's still that concern that maybe the get wasn't written Lishma. L'Rava the Amar Levisha ain't Edom Between L'Kaimoi. Umasnishi Mishum Ura the Ziyafu. The whole problem is the Baal my tiny, but the get is Mezuyif. Hachaloi Tzarech. Why? The Shchichi She'arasa, because it's the two friendly areas that there's no problem being Mekayim. Gebaltic. So now we have three nafkaminas, clearly showing what's impacted by the problem of Lashma and what's impacted by the problem of Irur. Practical Gemara, these are all wonderful things. But Rabba, the Omar, Lefishain B'ki Lashma, according to Rabba, where there's a real concern that the get was not written Lashma, Liboy Trey. It should require two Eidim. Midi Dahava, Akal Adisha B'Torah, where we say Eid Echad Nemen B'Isur. Why do you need? I'm sorry. Liboy Trey, you should need two Eidim. Why is one enough? And for the Gemara, you know why one is enough? Midi Dahava, Akal Adisha B'Torah, where Eid Echad is Nemen B'Isur. The reason why you don't need two, one is enough, is because Eid Echad Nemen. Sorry, it's part of the kasha. Oh, that's okay. So after the Gemara, Eid Echad Nemen B'Isur. So Eid Echad Nemen B'Isur is the part of the text. So the boy Trey immediately have a call Eid Shabbatar where you need two Eidim. After the Gemara, no, Eid Echad is Nemen B'Isur. Let's see Rashi. Immediately have a call Eid Shabbatar Kushu. That's the kasha. You're right. Rashi tells us. So before Rashi, I apologize. Dr. Gemara Mashani Eid Echad Nemen B'Isurin. Why? Sharei Hamina Torah Kol Echad VeEchad MiYisrael Alach Rosh Truma Val Shchita Val Niker Hagid V'ha Chelev. There's a reason why Rashi lists off these examples, but I'll call upon them. You see that the Torah gives an emonus. The Torah gives an emonus to people on merely the Isser. So why wouldn't you say here that one aid is enough as well? Dr. Gemara, Eimer Damrinan Eirechad Nemen B'Isurin. Where do you say Eirechad Nemen B'Isurin? Das Kigoyin Chaticha Sofik Shel Chelev Sofik Shel Shomen. In the case where it's a Sofik, the Lo Yitzchasik Yisura. We don't know if we have an Isser here. Rather, we have a Sofik. Is this Shomen or is this Chelev? As Rashi says, Lo Yitzchasik Yisura de Chelev B'Hach Chaticha Yisura Gufa. We have no idea that there's definitely Isser. However, Aval Hacha, this Chazik Yisur Neshishish, we know for sure she wasn't Neshishish. If it's a suffix, is this lady a Neshishish or not? Yeah, a Neirechad can tell us she's not a Neshishish. But here we know she's a Neshishish. You want to break her Chazak and make her Ois Neshishish? Have a Davar Shebe'erva, then Davar Shebe'erva Pachas Mishnai. Zokt, the Heilige Rashi, Hachis Chazik B'Hach Itza. This lady in question has a Chazaka Isser Eishasish. Correct, Rashi. Well, what about Tevel? What about Shchita? Tevel has a chazaka that you weren't out my first Trumas and Maishas yet. Shchita, it has a chazaka that it wasn't shechted. Dr. Rashi, and we Tevel, the Shchita loy garmina lakad armina b'yavamis, the hasam b'yadoy l'sakna. So now Rashi is introducing a new principle that gives you nemanis. If you're in a position to be able to correct the problem, you are considered nemon. You are considered nemon to say that the problem is corrected. Even though it's going against a chazaka, but over here, you don't have that nemon. You can't fix it. That's number one. And number two, why you should need two edim is ve'ein davar erba. Royu latirai b'pachas mishnayim. This is a question of a davar sheba erba. So normally you should need two edim for that. The yodef davar mi mamay. We learn al pishnayim edim yakum davar by mammon, and we learn ksiv hachis kimata v'davar davar. Chavazim al pishnayim edim yakum davar. We just learned that, and therefore, how is it that one aid, one shliach would be enough to say b'fani nechtam? And right now we're focusing on Rabbah, where it's a question of the kashrus of the get. Zok the Gemara, the answer is right. You could even, what if he's not a shaykhid? What if in a chabad, but it's still called biyada? It can learn if it's a shaykhid. Now, but the Gemara, the teretz is really this whole chashash. Why we did this is not a real chashash, because Rav Bekinen, most people know that a get has to be written l'shema. So it's a bait chashash of the Rabbanon. So they're allowed to say, we'll trust the Eidechad for it. Reb Meir holds you can't just follow the Rav and ignore the fact that there's a significant miyut of people who don't know halachas of gerushin. So there you should need to aid them. Zok the Gemara, no, this is a miyuta de miyuta. You know why? Stam safri dedaini migmiri. Who's going to be writing a get? Your average citizen is not writing a get. It's people who are in the business of writing Gittin. Soifrim. From the Soifrim, 99.999% for sure know how it needs to be done. So when you're looking at the pool of everybody, yeah, it might be a significant miyut who don't know that it has to be written Shema. But when you're narrowing it down to the pool of people who write Gittin, there you could be assured that they for sure know that it had to be written Shema. For Rabbanan Hudatrich, it's only an extra layer of Chomer Midrabanan that this whole chash is there. And therefore, the Remekel, if they would make it so difficult to give a get that you should be two edim, this woman would be trapped. She wouldn't be able to get free. Therefore, since the chash to begin with is only very minor, they're willing to rely on the testimony of the shliach leilach, the single guy, to say that it was written l'shema. Let's see, Rashi. Really, Rav Yisrael b'kin hang the ein l'choshtan, and you don't have to be choshtan. But afilu Reb Meir the chayish l'miyuta, even according to Reb Meir, who are chayish l'miyuta, where gabi katan nuktana, by a katan nuktana, the halach is according to Reb Meir ein cholten v'loy biyabed. Why not? Katan shama yibsisuris, he might be childless. What are the chances? It's a miyut of people. Most people grow up to be healthy adults. Or katana shematimsa idleness. It's only Reb Meir who doesn't allow the yibum because maybe this is an iser erva of eishes ach, and therefore he didn't allow the yibum because he was choshen for the miyuta. I guess not. Stam sifri dedaini sifri adayonim sheragilin lichter kol shtori Gittin there to make a gamiri to get isha boy lishma. So at least there's a smaller percentage of soifrim who don't know that it has to be lishma than there is of men who are serusim. An extra chash. The ika, the ashkach, kasuv oimit. We're talking not worried that someone wrote to get shalom lishma. We can assume without a doubt that every soifer for sure wrote it properly. So what is the chash? The chash is maybe there was a guy walking down the street and he saw a get written that had his name and his wife's name, and he says, wow, that's a sign from the Shemayim. I got to divorce my wife, right? Mishum the ika the ashkach kasav ba'oimei to go into nichtav l'shem echad mibnei iroi sheshmoik is shmoyu shmok is shma v'nimlach milagarish, and he decided not to give the get and he threw out the get. and now somebody else found it. That's the chash. So that's takam yutzid imuta. So Chaim, you're asking good. There's zero soifrim. There's zero soifrim who don't know about halacha l'shma. Here we're not worried about a soifer who didn't know the halacha. Here we're worried about someone who might have found the get. Dr. Gemara, therefore, mishum iguna ikilu ba rabbana. Dr. Rashi lehemei l'shliach, because otherwise, how were we supposed to get a get for her? Break the Gemara. Hi kulahu. You call this a kula? It's a chumru. This is a major chumra. Why? The imatzach is latrei. If you required her to have two edim, Rashi is l'meimer l'shma. Tule mati bal ma'ayer. Tule mati bal le'ayer. Because there's two edim that are confirming this get. But now that you use such a flimsy defense of only one aid, well, now hash the oti ma'ayer v'gichad l'badechad. If the Baal comes in his ma'ar, we lose. We don't have anybody to be mekayim to get. So you're really messing her up by being lenient when you're making the get. You're creating a very flimsy get that can be easily blown away. You're making her a lot of trouble. Dr. Gemara, high kula chumru the imatrach is like trey lo'asi Baal ma'ar. It's airtight. Upasale and then pasal the get. But chad, the fact that you're only asking for one aid up front is asking for trouble. Osi Baal uma'ar upasale. The Baal is going to be ma'ar and it's going to pasal the get, and that's very, very dangerous. Zok to Gemara, Kivin the Amar Mar, Bifnei Kama Noisnoi, since we learned later in the Gemara, Bifnei Kama Noisnoi Shliach Zela Ishtoi. The Omer Bifnei Bifani Nechtav, it's Bifnei Shnayim, so when the Shliach Leiloch is handing over the get, over there's two people there. Even the Amar b'fnei Kamen Nois Nolari B'Yoichin Reb Chanina Chad Amar b'fnei Beis, the Chad Amar b'fnei Gimel, Meikara Meidik Dayik V'Loi Osir L'Rui Nafshei. The Shliach knows that he's going to be scrutinized when he delivers this get. Meikara Meidik Dayik HaShliach Kishemekabla Miyad Baal. Back then, when he got his shlichus and he accepted the shtar, he knows that when he delivers it, he's going to be put on the grill. V'Yodei and he'll make sure that Shebarota and Migarsha. He'll know for sure that the Baal is doing a barotan. And therefore, we're not worried about Ir. You know why we're not worried about Ir? Since this shliach is so careful to be thorough, he's only going to accept the shlichus if he sees that the Baal really wants to do this. And therefore, the Baal is not going to be ma'ar because he wants to get rid of her. Vinami Oyer, and even if the Baal would be ma'ar at that point, Neman, the Vade Dok B'Milse Shaper, we can be fully confident that this aid crossed all his T's and dotted all his I's. Okay, there's a couple of interesting. That's not what the Gemara says. There can't be two Eidim. They don't see anything. It's just that the shliach is intimidated when he's going to deliver the get, so he makes sure to get clarity in what he's doing. So there's so many different shilas to discuss over here. Like Toshas asks, what's up is pink? We're worried about Ebeki and Shema. There's a million halachas of Gittin. How come we're not worried about those? So like there's so much to nash on. There's a whole shilah of what's part of Eretz Yisrael. There's a whole discussion of what's part of Eretz Yisrael. That's also a very interesting discussion. There's also a question of Ir. The halacha is, if I pull a star on somebody and say he owes me $100 and he's not there, and I want to go claim from his assets, Bezdin is ma'ara for him. Bezdin will say, maybe it's Mizuah, prove it. How come by a get, we only are concerned if the Baal is ma'ar? What if there's no Baal to be ma'ar? How come automatically, like every star, we don't question? So there's so many different questions here. Or about the Namanas of Neirechad. So I don't know which Tosfos to nash on first. So let's look at the Tosfos that talks about Ir first, and we'll see how it goes. So at the bottom Tosfos, V'myesh Allah of Oirin, Yiskayim B'choisma. Zog Tosfos. That's only if there's someone saying this get is Mizuah. What if no one claimed the get is Mizuah? I will close man. Also Baal Umar. If there's no one creating suspicion on this get, Nisis al pi get. Then she will surely be able to get married with this get, and we're not going to ask any questions. Bezdin isn't going to demand verification. They're going to assume it's a kosher get. Why? Because once again, we want to make it easy for a woman to get remarried and not make her stuck in a situation where she can't marry. But on the other hand, if someone came with a star and said that Reuben owes me money, and I tell Bezdin, I want you to liquidate Reuben's assets to pay me my money because Reuben's not here, their Bezdin will say, Taninon Mizuyaf Lenifra Shaloi B'Fana. If anybody if the claim made against somebody and that somebody isn't here to defend himself, Bezdin defends him and says, prove that the star is not Mizuyaf. The same thing when we Yosoymim Umulukuchais. The same thing if someone claims your father owed me money, so I want money from the estate, or you bought this property, but the person who you bought it from, I had lent him money before, and this property is meshubah to me. But the Lekuchais don't know the details because they weren't there. So therefore, Bezdin will tiny Mezuyif, and you'll have to prove that the star is a valid star. The Loikain, because if you won't say Mezuyif, if Bezdin wouldn't tiny Mezuyif on behalf of any person who's not here to defend himself, you're going to create severe problems. Anybody can always be vulnerable to such an attack. It's not much different than the special COVID PDF test. It's very easy to make a star. It's very easy to design a star. And then go make a claim when the defendant is not even there. So therefore, Bezdin has to stand there and tiny mezuyif, and you'll need to prove that the star is a good star. You can't really be arrived from this. Even if you wouldn't tie the mezuyif, you could always tie the parua. So you don't have a raya that you tie the mezuyif, because to protect the nitva, you could tie the parua. It's a good star, but maybe it was paid off already. Even the hu atmoi have a mehemen leimer parua. The nitva himself could have said, "Yeah, the star is valid, but I have already paid it off." Migu, believe me, that I could have said mezuyah. The kaimalon command amar b'perek hamoiches habayis gabishtar kiss hayoytz al yisoyim. If there's a star that's claiming that the estate is owing money to a teveya, the nishba v'goiva mechza. He will swear and take half of a palga de pikadon, but the half of the pikadon, I guess it was some type of arrangement that was half mil, half pikadon. Of a palga de pikadon, tanina lehu peruahu loch. They'll say it was paid off. Abagav de loy tanina lehu nensu, even though you don't have a nensu on the part of the pikadon, say that they're potter, mishum davin hayanemen loymer hechzartiv loch b'migu de nensu, because the father could have also said that the pikadon was already given back to the teveya with a migu of nensu. So even though Tosfos said earlier that you don't have a raya, you can tiny mezuyif, maybe the tiny is parua, the Tosfos they can even tiny mezuyif. By mecher and matana, you can't neutralize that by saying I already paid. You only can do it by shtar choyim. By shtar mecher, the only way you can defend yourself from a shtar mecher or a shtar matana, the yachtam edim, the yigva shalei b'fanav, the yisayim l'kuchos, there you have to say mezuyif. Okay, so that's the first interesting shiloh that I wanted to discuss. We still have a couple of minutes, so I want to look into the ein echad nemen b'isurim. There's two little toshes in here that are interesting to look at. Midi dehava akol edyoy shebetoyah bedalis gasinim with a dalit. Going, it's edyo, it's not a rise. Going edos dine mominus v'din nefashis. The istagaris a rayis bereish that midi dehava on a rayis v'loy nehira. That's not mistaber. Imkain my mishani erechad nemen b'isurin maloy lahaskir isurin. Isurin has nothing to do with it. But ervanami isuhu. Erv is also nisur. But haki havel lememer ladami l'sharais. Okay. Now erechad nemen b'isurin. This is very important. Here's a kuntrish. Sharei hamina Torah. Kol echad ve'echad ala froshes truma ushchita v'nikar hagid. That's taking out the gid anasha, which we don't do anymore. B'chelem. Zok toises v'loyhaya loy lahasker froshes truma ushchita. Rashi should not have listed those in those items where he's bringing a ride in Erechos Neman. The bahanu Neman aval gav the ischazik yisura. You know, in those cases, as Rashi pointed out later, their Neman, even though it was ischazik yisura. You know why? Because a person can make the shechita himself, a person can be mafish the truma himself. Kamosha appears that contrast Besamach, like Rashi himself said a little later. That's what it says in the Isha Rabbah. Ushchita, Avagav the Hashta Ebiyot Listaknoi. So right now, it's shechted meat. This guy is saying this is shechted. Right now, he can't fix it. If it wasn't a vela, shechting and that won't help anymore. But since Meikara Hoya B'Yodei Lishchot, I'm nemon today that to say this is kosher meat because I could have shechted it when it was still alive. And that's also an amonis. The Imloi Kain, if you don't say that, Amai Mehemet. Why would he be believed? Kivan the Chazik Yisura. It's a Chazik Yisura. It was originally Iber Menachai. So Metzina b'Shum Makom sheyitzdarech begadol echad oimid al gabo. You never require that when someone's doing like a shchita, someone has to watch him. Ma'asim b'chol yom de mehemen, and we see ma'asim b'chol yom as is developed that if someone shechs an animal, nobody has to supervise. You don't need to aid him. He's believed to say that I shechted it. Even though it's a case where you wouldn't say Roiv Mitzui Netzah Shchita Mumchanein, Kagoyin Shenechtach Kol HaRoish Vein Beis HaShchita Nicker. What if the whole head is chopped off? So then, if we know for sure there was a Shchita, the question is, was it done properly? Yeah, then you'll say Roiv Mitzui Netzah Shchita Mumchanein. But what if you have a piece of meat, you have no idea if it was even shechted, for all you know it was shot? So in such a case, you're relying on the eight. And that we trust the woman today to say it was shechted. Even though women don't know how to shech, they don't know the lach of shchita, even should be yada lilmoid lishchot, since they could learn, since a woman could learn how to shech, or she can hire a good shaychit to be yada dummy. So a woman is never to say, I brought home my chicken from the butcher for supper, and I'm telling you it's kosher meat. She's not be yada something, she couldn't shech it herself, but she could have arranged that it should be shechted. Therefore, she's nemenis. In Toimer, correct Toisvis. When we know long, the Erecha Dem and Bisurin. What is the Bakar? Everywhere that Erecha is Nemot. In Shlomo the Alpinum in Nida, we learn from Nida. The Darshinon, the Perikamadir, it says, V'sofra Allah La'atzma. A woman can count the Yemei Nida. So you see, and that's a Shaila of Chayvik Krisos, yet we trust a woman on it. That's how we know Erecha Dem and Bisurin. In Toimer, correct Toisvis. Imkein Afilu is Chazik Yisura. By a Nida, she's a Chazik Yisura. And she's believed, so the Eirechot should be believed, even though it's a Chazik Yisura. Yishlomer, the Eina Becheskes Sheteira Kosara. She has a Cheskes Tumah that she was a Nida, but she definitely doesn't have a Chazaka that she's continuing to see. So she's Lagabe her saying, I didn't see Dam today. Lagabe that, it's not considered as Chazik Yisura. Aru Shiva Tahira Memela. It's not pshat that her Edus is breaking the Tumah. All it's doing is saying today there was no dam, and for that there is no chazaka to say that there would have been dam. That's not called as chazik yisura, and the gam b'yad l'tzvah. And even if you want to say that it is chazik yisura, lagabi that is true, she could oivel. So therefore, she would be believed. The Gemara asks the reason why one eight is enough is because eirechadam b'surin. Picture ben town, machuba he says. What type of teretz is that? Ikir aget yerchiach shetzorch lachayis b'mishnayim. If you're going to tell me erecha dem b'surin, then b'chatchila aget should only require the signature of 1-8. So you see clearly that Gittin doesn't subscribe to the erecha dem b'surin. V'tirtz every ben tam dachi kamar the erecha dem b'surin b'chahaygavno sheikir aget nasikfar. Sure, there's a halacha you need to aid him to write the get. But once you had to aid him writing the get, moving forward, Eirechot should be Nema B'Yisurin, at that point, all we need if it was written Lishma. Okay. Zok Toshus have a davar shebe'erva, because the Gemara, it's a little bit unusual. The Gemara says it's a chazik yisura, so you need to aid him, and it's a davar shebe'erva. How did not a davar shebe'erva? Why did it mention that it's also a davar shebe'erva? Oimari, Mishum Deba Isha Rabba, the Shari Yisura by other Yisurim, going Tevel, the Hektish, the Kainamos, Misavkalon, Imehemen, Afilu Ischazik Yisura. Valav Biyadai. Oiloi. There was actually a Shaila, could be there would be an emanus of an Eirechad, even for a regular Yisurim, even if it wasn't Biyadai L'Sakna. So because of that, the Gemara threw in for a good measure, no matter what you want to say, other Shailas and other Sugyas, this is Also, on top of his chazik yisura, there's also a davar shebe'erba, so you should surely require to eat it. In time of factors, if that's the case, why do you need the gilui by dida to tell us that she's nememes? If it should be like that everywhere. There's a having to say that it's like a davar shebe'erba. Okay, gewaltig. Let's look at Tam's Afin Dali Mikra because this also addresses what Chaim was concerned about. Baba coming miuta, dimiuta, the loy chashinan afil Rabbeir. Okay, let's stop here, and we will be better. We bamshach tomorrow. We got a good start. I want to wish everybody a gittin tug.